Welcome to The Brass Junkies, a podcast from the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network featuring interviews with the world's greatest brass players by two thoroughly average ones, Lance LaDuke and myself, Andrew Hitz. Today's episode features just me and Lance. We thought we'd give you a little background on Pedal Note Media, the Brass Junkies podcast, and our Pray for Jens campaign. See if we can pull off an entire episode without a guest next. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of The Brass Junkies. This is your host, Andrew Hitz, and I'm joined by fellow co-host Lance LaDuke. How are you this evening, Lance?
I am effluviant.
I don't even know what that means.
Oh, you don't want to know. It's good. I'm good.
Good.
We'll go with good.
Whenever I can use a word that's 4 times the syllables and that other people don't know what they mean, I always try to do that to appear smart. So, since I only have 1 collegiate degree, and I like people to think I have 3,
so leaves you with no recompense.
Yeah, there you go. I'm gonna start a Google Doc and pull out my dictionary at the end of this. So our
family show.
Our producers asked us to leave a little bit of silence at the beginning of the recordings so that they could kind of deal with the noise, and we were able to hold it together for about 3 seconds, and we're unfortunately video chatting, and then there was just chaos, and it took over a minute to stop laughing like 3rd graders who are up way past their bedtime. So
no additional charge for that amount.
No additional charge at all. So, all right. So this episode of the Brass Junkies is
a very special episode.
It is a very special episode indeed. It's just Lance and I. We asked about 20 pseudo-famous brass players to join us, and no one's interested. No, that's not true. We thought that we would do a brief episode for you to just kind of explain why we're doing this and what made us think of the Brass Junkies in the first place, and then talk about how you can support the show, and then very quick plugs for a couple of upcoming things that we have going on. So, Lance, why don't you talk to the nice people out there in podcast land about how we came up with the idea for Pedal Note Media, which is the digital media company that we started that's responsible for this podcast.
Hello, nice people. This is Lance. What are you beating on? What is that noise?
Oh, can you hear that?
Smacking. Yeah.
That's my dog. My dog, see, my wife and my child are out of town.
You're beating your dog.
I'm beating my dog. She is a little attention needy, and my wife is out of town. So even though it's my 8th wedding anniversary, kind of sad.
That is sort of sad.
So I'm just home beating my dog. That's how I'm celebrating my wedding anniversary. She came in, and I forgot. I forgot that the microphone is sensitive. So yes, that's what you were hearing was my dog came to say hello.
Very good. Well, hello, nice people. So nice people. We Andrew and I left Boston Brass about 2 years ago, and have had each written a book. I wrote Music Practice Coach. Andrew wrote the Band Director's Guide to Everything Tuba. Is that the right title?
A collection of interviews with the experts.
A collection of interviews with the experts. And so we talked about trying to find other ways to collaborate, because we hit it off when we were in Boston Brass, spent the last couple of years of our time in the group traveling basically every day together. And survived it and lived to tell the tale. And so
it was really fun.
It was,
traveling with Lance was really fun.
I rode in the trunk. Andrew drove. It was fine.
It was like driving Miss Daisy, but just a little different.
It was quiet. Thumped 2 times if I had to stop. 1 time to turn the music down.
Oh, goodness.
And so we talked about a variety of projects that we could get involved with recordings and books and the like, and decided that a media company, some sort of umbrella company that could allow us to create, co-create projects, as well as have a vehicle for our individual projects to funnel them through that. So develop a media brand that would allow us to kind of go in any direction that we wanted to. And the first product of that was the result of a Kickstarter campaign that we had some fantastic supporters. It was the Brass Recording Project Volume 1, which is featuring a dozen or so arrangements done by J.D. Shaw. J.D. has done something like 2,000 arrangements. You'll hear that or have heard that on a podcast, depending on when you hear this. And the vast majority of them were never recorded, and so we thought it was an opportunity for us to get some of those recorded. Ideally, we're going to come out with a whole series of those, and that was the first one. The next idea that we had was the product that you're listening to right now, which was the Brass Junkies. So we spent some time in development about what it should look like and feel like, and settled on the notion that probably the thing that we have as an advantage is access to. We've been very fortunate that we've got to work with the best brass players on the planet, and because of that, it allows us an opportunity to call up some of them and call in favors and bug them and interview them and find out things that even we didn't know. And so later on, we'll talk about some of the other projects that are coming out with Pedal Note Media. But those are the first two shining examples of this endeavor.
Yeah, we have like Lance said, we've had the opportunity to work with so many great musicians, and musicians have fascinating stories. Some of them are suitable for a family-friendly podcast. Others are not, but they're really it's pretty incredible how many different places and directions and everything that the music world has come from, and so we're gonna try and get to know some of them better ourselves, and in the process, hopefully, provide an entertaining product for you to get to know them as well.
It's been really rewarding. I guess our third podcast is aired now, and just the number of people that have reached out, I know to me, and I'm assuming the same with you, Andrew, that have sort of come out of the woodwork. And in fact, I was on campus at Carnegie Mellon the other day talking with a student, and another student was coming down the hall and had earbuds in and like stopped and turned and showed me his phone. He was listening to our podcast at the moment, and he was like raving about how, and so nice emails and calls from people saying that they're listening and they're enjoying what we're doing, which is really satisfying. You never really know. This was just sort of a goofy idea, and it's turns out to have some sort of an audience.
Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, we were just Lance and I were just down presenting together at the South Central Regional Tuba Euphonium Conference in Conway, Arkansas, and there were a number of our colleagues there who I had not heard from, but who, as soon as they saw me, told me how much they enjoyed the podcast, which was great. So why don't you tell the folks about Patreon, Lance?
This is all totally bootstrapped. Andrew and I have put our own money into it. We had the Kickstarter that got the Brass Recording Project off the ground, but in terms of starting the podcast, funding the podcast, getting the graphic stuff, all of that stuff done, paying for these snazzy microphones, we're just sort of doing it out of our own pockets. And so we would love to have, if there are listeners who would like to help us in what it is that we do, we want to make it easier for you to do that. And there's a new platform, relatively new platform, called Patreon, Patreon. And at Patreon, if you go to patreon.com, I should have the site up here in front of me. It's Patreon, and it's the Brass Junkies. If you just search the Brass Junkies at Patreon, or if you go to our website, you can find the link there. I'll find the address here shortly. You can sponsor us. And what that means in our case is that you can pay $1 or $5 or as much as you want to help support our podcast. And at each level, there's an incentive for you. You can sort of think of it like a Kickstarter, except on an ongoing basis. So rather than asking someone to give $100 for a project, it's a situation where we want you to consider being a sponsor for each episode. So each set of episodes that'll come out, you have an opportunity to set up a funding limit so that you don't, if you want to set an upper limit of $25 a year, you can do that. If all of a sudden we start launching all kinds of podcasts left and right, you can set a cap on it, which is really nice as well. I'm striking out on finding the address right now.
It's patreon.com/thebrassjunkies.
See, that's a catchy name. Who came up with that? That's not bad. And there are, as I mentioned, well, maybe I didn't mention, there are incentives just as you have with Kickstarter. And so some of ours, they will have, the podcasts themselves will always be free. That's a really important part of it to us. We feel like that's a thing we want to just do. And however, if you do want to contribute, then you can get access to exclusive news and updates from us. There'll be downloadable. We'll have downloadable stuff, either a free track or a free section of one of our books. You can get a message stuck in one of the episodes. You can get some of our merchandise. You can participate in a Google Hangout. There's all sorts of ways that we'd love to include you in the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's pretty, you'll hear us talking. There's a whole bunch of content that happens before and after the recordings, and if you want to sit in on one of those, then at one of the funding levels, you can do that. We'll just sort of mute your mic, and you can just sort of be a part of the action. And actually, that's sort of a nice. The other things about it, I think, that I want to stress is that you can set an upper limit. It's not like we're going to take you to the bank, and you can kind of cancel it or adjust it at any time you want to adjust it up or adjust it down. And it's on a per episode basis. So we're tending to come out with about 2 a month. So if you wanted to set it at $100 an episode, first of all, we'd be really happy. Second of all, you could set an upper limit of $200 a month so that you have control over that. It was started by Jack Conte, who was one of the members of Pomplamoose, and it's an effort to. The recording industry is such that it's really tough for musicians to make money on off of recordings or artists, frankly, because of the intermediaries. And so this is a way for fans of an art are able to give funds directly to the creation of that art to encourage it to continue being made. Sort of a strange sentence, but I think you hopefully get the sentiment of it.
That was pretty good for a low brass player.
Not bad,
yep.
Right?
Yeah, not bad at all.
So yeah, we would love to have you check that out.
Even $1 an episode would be awesome, just to show some support. So, and if you can't afford even $1 an episode, we're very happy that you're listening. So
yeah, absolutely. And then, do you want to talk about Zazzle, or you want me to talk about it?
The Pray for Yen stuff.
Yeah.
Let me talk about that. So we've got a running gag here on the Brass Junkies, which we wanted to kind of let you in on and to explain. There is, you will hear on, we stumbled on this a couple of episodes in, we stumbled on it a couple of episodes in, except we mentioned it in the first episode, and that's because Ryan Anthony, who is our good friend, ended up jumping the queue, and he ended up being our first episode that we aired, and that's actually for a reason that I'm going to get to in just a second. But we have been talking about this Pray for Yens. First of all, we want to make sure, before I even tell you what it is, there is absolutely nothing wrong with Jens Lindemann. He's got some mental issues, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah, that's overstating it a
Yeah,
little
exactly.
bit.
Yeah, all right, yeah, fair enough.
Nothing physically wrong with it.
I'm not trying to tell you he's normal. He's not. He's not a normal player. He's one of the best in the world, and he's also insane. But there is nothing wrong. Jens is not sick, and there's nothing wrong with him. So here's the history: is that back in the day when we were with Boston Brass, the Boston Brass still does at Christmas time expands to a brass big band and plays, amongst other things, the Stan Kenton arrangements of the Christmas carols, and Jens used to be a regular on those concerts, and Jeff Connor used to send out an email to everyone in Boston Brass and everyone that was playing. We would have some players that did the whole tour, and then others that would just kind of do regional. So there was a whole bunch of people on this email And every year it became a tradition that Jens would accidentally, in air quotes, hit reply all to the entire list. So he'd be emailing 20 people when he was pretending that he thought that he was only replying to one person. And it was always a trumpet player every year. And he would always say, Fred Powell, our good friend, was one of the victims one year, where he said, hey, Fred, it's Jens. I just wanted you to know that I heard about your chop problems, and that I just wanted to know that you're in my thoughts and in my prayers, and if there's anything that I can do to help you out, please don't hesitate to ask. And then he would say, signed with love, whatever, Jens. So he would send this to the entire list. A lot of brass players he knew, a lot of brass players he had never met before, and he's telling them all that Fred had chop problems, which Fred did not have any chop problems. And Fred was just the victim one year. There was a new victim every single year, which coincidentally, it was never anyone in Boston Brass who were the people paying him. He's smarter than he looks. So it was always one of the add-ons. So we got the idea that we are going to be asking, and we already have been asking every single guest on our show to comment on Jens's chop problems that he's been having. And to be clear, Jens is not having any chop problems at all. He's still one of the best trumpet players in the world. But but if you are a fan of the show so far, then you are figuring out that Lance and my primary purpose is to amuse ourselves and each other. And if the guest likes it and the audience likes it, then so be it. And so it amuses us, and so far it has greatly amused our guests to be commenting on how we all need to pray for Jens. So this thing kind of took off. And we contacted our graphic designer, Will Houchin, who is great and who did the avatar for the podcast and who designed our album and all that artwork, and who designed my book cover, and who did the Pedal Note Media logo, and he's done a lot of work for us. I asked him to do a logo and that said "Pray for Jens," something along the lines of like "Vote for Pedro" from Napoleon Dynamite. And he came up with this great "Pray for Jens" understated with this little like kind of bugle underneath it, and so this thing has taken off. You can listen to the Ryan Anthony episode, which was the first one, if you missed it. His response to all this is pretty funny. So and a little bit of backstory there, which I think made the episode. I can't remember whether it was before or during. But when we were recording the Stan Kenton Christmas carols in Syracuse, New York, a long, long time ago, Jens was on the recording session. And after the session one night, it was about 1 a.m. We were all hanging out, and Jens said, "All right, everybody, I'm going to call Ryan Anthony." So he made the room all be quiet, and then he called Ryan on his cell phone, and he put him on speakerphone, and he then said, say hi to say hi everybody, and everybody said hi Ryan, and then Jens in front of all of us proceeded to tell Ryan that every single big name brass player in the world was on this recording session, so he just wanted to say hello, pointing out that Ryan was not on the recording session, and so Ryan was very happy to be able to get back at Jens. So Lance over there, who's a little bit of an evil genius, he using Zazzle, which you can make all sorts of products, has uploaded the Pray for Jens logo. And I can see Lance looking for a URL right now.
I've got it. I'm all ready. I locked it in.
Oh, there you go.
From my mistake.
What is the URL, Lance?
It is Zazzle, ZAZZLE.com/Pedal Note Media. And the words Pedal Note Media are separated by underscores. Pedal _ note _ media. And you can get a Pray for Jens. Well, actually, there's two designs. There's the Brass Junkies logo, which features me in a purple shirt and Andrew in a green one. And you can
in cartoon form.
Cartoon form,
yes.
Fortunately, not scratch and sniff. And you can get that version or the Pray for Jens, and you can get yourself a standard apron. You can get a dog T-shirt,
or what I have downstairs, which is a baby onesie. Actually,
baby onesie.
It's a toddler onesie. Yeah, I got an 18 to 24 that he's going to grow into.
Playing cards. Yeah, all sorts of stuff.
So you can get stickers. The other thing to tie into this is that all of the money that we make off of the Pray for Jens fashion line plus cards is all going to go to the Ryan Anthony Foundation. And you really should listen to that first episode if you haven't, because Ryan has a much more interesting story than me, than Lance, or than you, whoever you are. He's not only former trumpet player with Canadian Brass, not only the current principal trumpet of the Dallas Symphony, but he also, a couple of years ago, was diagnosed really out of nowhere with multiple melanoma, which is a terminal cancer of the bone marrow that usually appears in patients 70 and older, and it was obviously shocking with a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old child. And Ryan is one heck of a fighter, and not only is his cancer in remission currently, but last month he hosted this huge, ridiculously huge event called Cancer Blows in Dallas, which had a lineup. All of these people flew to Dallas on their own dime to play for Ryan. That's how beloved he is. Arturo Sandoval, Doc Severinsen, Alan Vizzuti, Vinny DiMartino, Marvin Stamm, Wycliffe Gordon, Phil Smith, Mark Gould, Jose Sabaja, Jens Lindemann. His chops were okay that night at least. Anthony DiLorenzo, Chris Jottis, Ronnie Rahm. The list just goes on and on and on and on. And that kind of shows the impact that guy's had on the brass world and on the musical world. And the Dallas Symphony played on it. I mean, it was not something that any one person should ever be able to organize, let alone someone who has a full-time job, is a father, and who is battling cancer. So all of the proceeds from Pray for Jens are going to go to the Ryan Anthony Foundation, and their mission statement is to provide funding for blood cancer research. So our goal is to have a Pray for Jens sticker on every single brass case in America, basically. So I think that pretty much covers the Pray for Jens thing. So
I think so, yeah.
So help us spread the word. So yes, there is nothing wrong with Jens other than what there's always been wrong with Jens. So,
exactly.
Yes.
Support Ryan, support us, bash Jens, everybody wins.
Yeah, it's a win-win-win-win-win. Yeah, that's good stuff. So cool. I think that that all that is left is the Brass Junkies is part of the Pedal Note Media podcast network, and we're not sure how many podcasts we will ultimately have on the network, but it's going to be multiples. And both Lance and I are currently working on podcasts on our own. And Lance, why don't you tell us about the one that you've got cooking?
I've been knocking around an idea for a few years now called Lance Learns to Play, and I'm going to do it. That's what's going to happen. See, I wrote this book called The Music Practice Coach 3 or 4 years ago, and it in some ways describes how it was that I learned the trombone in a short amount of time. And it was in the distillation of the learning process that I got really fascinated. And there's books that go into this 4-hour work week and the first 28 hours and some of the stuff that Malcolm Gladwell has talked about. And so I just got this funny idea that what if I tried to learn every instrument on the planet? And so I came up with this idea, Lance Learns to Play, and it's sort of a musical, if you combined Man versus Food and Dirty Jobs and funneled it into a musical direction. That's kind of the idea. And so I'm...
Is it going to involve sewage plants?
You never know.
You never know.
Well, there'll be a trombone episode. So
perfect.
The first
you're gonna learn how to play the trombone finally.
Yeah, eventually.
Good.
So the intent is not that I'm going to become an expert in any one of these things. My hope is that by me making a fool of myself, that anybody who was thinking, oh, that looks interesting to play the clarinet, or I used to play the drums when I was in high school, or I've always wanted to learn to play the guitar, or whatever it is, that my humiliation will serve as incentive for you to give it a try. I want to demystify this notion that it's a really difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult thing to become Yo-Yo Ma, but if you played cello in high school and you're a nurse or a truck driver or I don't care what, there's some community orchestra somewhere that would be more than happy to have you play with them, and you don't need to be Yo-Yo Ma in order to get value out of playing music. And so that's kind of the highfalutin notion behind it. And then where the rubber meets the road is that there'll be a weekly YouTube video, 2 or 3 minutes, to kind of show my journey. There'll be an instrument per month. And then if you want to dive deeper, then there'll be a podcast that comes out every other week where you get to sort of hear more of the behind the scenes. And I'll interview people about both students and adult amateurs and pros. I'll interview all three sort of groups about why they picked the instrument that they picked, what keeps them coming back to it, what's difficult about it, what's easy, what's fun. And then it'll end each instrument. There will be some public performance of me attempting to play this thing. And would you care to guess? Did I already tell you what the first episode, the first month is going to be?
You have not.
The first episode is scheduled for May, which is an aggressive schedule, but I'm hoping that I can pull this off. You'll also just sort of hear my travails along the way, trying to make this whole thing happen. I'm just going to sort of show you guts and all, everything that goes into this. And it doesn't matter if I succeed, and it's more likely that I'll fail. But I teach at Carnegie Mellon University, which happens to be one of the only places in the United States that you can get a major in bagpipes.
Get out.
So I'm going to tackle the bagpipes in the month of May.
That's awesome. You had me at Lance humiliation, but bagpipes I'm even more in. That's awesome. I've always wanted to play the bagpipes.
Me too. I've been dying to play it forever. There's a freshman major right now, and he's going to sort of I told him that he's going to help me, and he said okay, and he doesn't know what it means yet. So that's a good thing. But he's going to sort of be I'm going to kind of have a Sherpa for each instrument that I can go to. They won't necessarily be my teacher, but they'll kind of help me on my path. The last thing I'll say about it is that my thought was, if you are somebody that wants to take up an instrument, the first thing you're probably going to do is figure out if you know somebody that knows how to do that, and then go ask them, well, how do you get started? And I want to go through that process for you so that you can sort of jump a few steps ahead of the line and maybe get over whatever that fear is to tackle whatever the instrument is. I want to encourage people to participate in music at any age and at any level of ability. You don't have to be a pro in order to get value out of it. So it's going to be tough to pull off that kind of content amount, but we'll see. It's worth a shot. We'll start there.
Your life is hard.
My life is hard. Some people have real problems, and then there's me.
And then there's us. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to encourage you, but that sounds really fascinating.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I'm dying to. It's one of these things where I do this anyway. Like I taught myself to play the ukulele and a little bit of guitar and a little bit of banjo and the trombone, and it's just sort of the process of learning an instrument is interesting to me. Talking to people about why they took up a whatever is really interesting to me. That's why the podcast is so interesting to me. This podcast that we're doing now, just to hear that story is just fascinating to me. How the brain, how you develop these skills is just endlessly interesting.
So the podcast that I am working on, and by the time that this episode airs, then my podcast should have already debuted. So
it was awesome. Yeah, it was really good. And everybody should sign up for the Patreon page for that one too.
I don't mean that it's happened now. I mean by the time that the people in podcast land hear it. Yeah. So that did sound sincere, though. I do appreciate it.
I'll say it again when I listen to it.
Fantastic. Then you can mean it. That's good. The name of the podcast that I am doing is called The Entrepreneurial Musician with Andrew Hitz. And which is my name, which is why, and it's with me, which is why I called it With Andrew Hitz. And these days I am Still playing the tuba all the time. I just played a solo just a couple of nights ago on a recital. I perform with an orchestra. I've got some quintet gigs coming up. I'm still playing a lot, but what really gets me up in the morning and the books that I read and the podcasts that I listen to and the stuff that I end up talking to people about is all about being an entrepreneur these days and just the music business and the different aspects of that. And I'm doing some consulting work right now with a couple of different brass quintets and just talking to them about everything from programming to marketing to partnership agreements to all of that stuff. And to some people that stuff is really boring, and then to other people like me, you hear that and go like, yeah, that's cool. So I'm going to be talking about all aspects of business, and I learned a ton from my time in Boston Brass. When I was hired when I was 24, there was really not a business bone in my body. I was really good at the tuba, and that was and I was good on a mic, and that was about it. So, and I was reliable. I always showed up, and those are obviously important traits to have when you have a brass quintet gig. But yeah, there was no deep thinking going on with me. So I was still a college student. All the college students listening to this are obviously deep thinkers, or else why would they be listening to me ramble right now? So I'm not casting. Casting, throwing, casting is
chucking,
chucking aspersions.
Aspersion chucker.
The first guest, who I am interviewing in a few days, is Renan Meyer, who is the bass player from a group called Time for Three. And Renan is like a brother to me. He's one of my dearest friends. And as well as the other guys, Nick and Zach, who make up Time for Three. It's two violins and a bass. I've known all three of them since they were just out of college, out of Curtis, where they went to school, and poor. And I was poor at the same time. And then I got a gig, and then they created a gig, and they are now playing all over the world. Their career has, as Time for Three, has just absolutely exploded. And it's been a very organic ride for them. And I'm going to be discussing with Renan every aspect of Time for Three, and also he's quite the individual entrepreneur as well. He has a bass camp, the Wabash bass camp, that he runs with Eric Larson of the Houston Symphony and Hal Robinson, the principal bass of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And he runs a charity that's music related, and he's got a blog that he runs. He's got a lot of stuff going on. So I'm going to pick his brain, and there's a number of other people that I'm going to be hitting up as well. Some are going to be performers, some are going to be on the business side of things, but I'm going to be looking to learn myself from all of these people about these various things. Lance is going to be a guest as well, and actually we're going to get into one of the things that we're going to get into when I interview Lance is he talked about learning the trombone, and it's a fascinating story that he learned the trombone in order to join Boston Brass, and that's the short of it. But the long of it is fascinating, and is the behavior of a successful business person within the music world today. So
I still don't know where fifth position is, but don't tell anybody.
Yeah, well, it's that.
How often is your show planned on coming out?
Every other week, I believe. Yeah, so it should be twice a month. That's the plan for it, and I'll be taking as we are with this show. If any of you have any suggestions about guests that you would like to see featured on the Brass Junkies, or really weird instruments that you'd like Lance to learn, or guests that you'd like to hear interviewed on the Musical Entrepreneur, then you can email those suggestions to pedalnotemedia@gmail.com. Is a great place to do that. And you can also contact us through our website, through pedalnotemedia.com. And we've got a Facebook page, and we're on Twitter, and Lance and I also are obviously on all of those places individually as well. And As for the Brass Junkies, we have already interviewed Kevin Gibo, trumpet player in the Army Ceremonial Band here in D.C., where I am, and who also has a lot of solo stuff going on, and we're excited for that to air. That should be airing in, I think, a week from right now, not a week from when you're hearing this, because this is going to be after that. And we've also interviewed Rex Richardson, so you can go back and listen for that. And Carol Jansch agreed to be interviewed, which I don't think I even told you that, Lance. So
there you go.
Yep. So she's excited to do this as well. So and Victor Barranco, who will air after this episode, but we're interviewing him in the morning. So perfect example of somebody super interesting. That guy was born and raised in the town of North Pole, Alaska. And then ends up at at UNT doing his graduate work and plays with the Army Blues and is just like he's one of the best trombone players in the world. He's fascinating and he's had a fascinating career and he's played with more rock and pop groups than you could list on a podcast. And he's not old either. He's like super young, and he's a great classical player and a great jazz player, and he's a great educator, and he's a Yamaha artist, and he's just got tons of stuff going on. And he did not grow up down the street from Lincoln Center, or in the heart of San Francisco or Chicago. So, and he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. So
this is a testament to the I hate to say nice things about you, especially when you're here, but a testament to how vital a podcast like you're putting together is, because we live in a world where technologically now your ears have to be 1,000 times bigger than they were, and your world is 1,000 times bigger than it was, and you're competing against people from all corners of the planet. And so it's not enough to be the best player in North Pole, Alaska, or in North America, for heaven's sakes. You just need to be the best that you can be, and you also need to be distinctive. You need to find your own path, and that's, I guess, what you're going to dive into.
I have found that all of the people who have careers that I am trying to model mine after, that when
Beyonce,
Gaga, exactly, Cyndi Lauper. When I end up talking to them, maybe they're people that played with Boston Brass. Maybe they're people that I've played with outside of Boston Brass. Maybe they're people that I just went and saw perform and haven't had the chance to play with. But when I sit and talk to them, whether it's over drinks at night or it's over a meal or it's in a van driving between gigs, that I immediately start learning stuff from all of these people. And everyone's trying to tackle the same problem, which is being heard it's never been easier to broadcast, and it's never been harder to actually have anything you're broadcasting being heard. And which is why I talk a lot about marketing and about social media and about websites and all of that kind of stuff. But to hear every successful person that I cross paths with, they all have a slightly different take or outlook on the integral, the imperative business skills that you have to have. And so the more different takes that I hear on the same stuff, then the better and more thorough and more intentional my approach is to all of those aspects of the music business. And that's what I'm going to have all of these guests be sharing with myself and via extension to all of you.
Hey, you want to talk about a thing?
About a thing?
A thing.
What's a thing?
I wanted to talk about. Have we talked about Meerkat and Periscope?
Not much, just a little bit. I actually played some etudes on Meerkat today and had a few people listening in. It was funny. I just plopped it on my stand when I was practicing. So,
how many people tuned in?
I think it was 4. It's not that many. So, but I don't really I haven't followed anybody on it yet. It was my first foray.
Well, and you know what Twitter did, because Meerkat had initially it was going to just go out to all of your Twitter followers, and now they have they've gone in and there's an update that allows you to manually make that happen now. But they had that set up they had an agreement with Twitter, and then Twitter locked them out of that because Twitter bought this company called Periscope, which does ostensibly the same thing. Have you played with Periscope yet?
I have.
And so Periscope is now owned by Twitter, so guess which one they're pushing?
I thought Meerkat was owned by Twitter.
I thought it was too, but it turns out they just had a sort of a gentleman's agreement until they bought Periscope, and they must obviously believe there's a future in the technology.
So these are both apps that you can broadcast yourself, and that people can watch you and doing whatever you're doing and interact with you, and it gets pushed out through your Twitter feed. And yeah, exactly. It's never been easier to create content, but anybody can. Somebody who's been playing bagpipes for 5 minutes can can have something on Meerkat or on Periscope, and it has equal billing with you unless you develop a following. So
exactly. Well, and that's, I mean, I'm going to use it for sure.
Yep.
When I start doing these episodes.
Yeah. No. Yeah. For sure.
Actually, I'm going to start. We're on Periscope right now. Periscope. So we are now live talking about. This is very meta. We're talking about Periscope while on Metacast. Is that the name of our company? No. But the other thing that we're planning on doing, we haven't figured out all the ins and outs of it, but I've mentioned probably too many times that I teach at Carnegie Mellon, and we've tried a variety of things to try and help. I want to choose my words carefully for a change.
That's once in a row.
I'll say enhance the concert-going experience, particularly for people who aren't comfortable going to concerts, classical music concerts. And so we experimented with tweet seats, where we had me sitting up on the top balcony of Carnegie Music Hall in Pittsburgh, tweeting just sort of commentary that people could engage with or not.
Second oboe, missed note.
There was a little bit of that from their peers. Like the students that were in the concerts would often do shout-outs, usually positive, but not always. In fact,
that's helpful.
The best, actually, I was a part of this one. There was a knucklehead trumpet player who will remain nameless who forgot his bow tie. And so there was
that is fully mockable. Yeah, you can sleep well.
And mock we did. So we have as many viewers as I thought we would have at this point, which is 0. But we're going to do a series of either Periscope or Meerkat from backstage, so that the stage crew we can sort of see what's going on between movements, or if they're getting ready to move the harp out or move it back, we can see what's going on there instead of just sort of sitting there, reading your program for the 18th time.
That's cool.
And even the rehearsals leading up to it, so to try and build some interest. I think it's incredibly, just like Patreon, I think it's another incredibly valuable tool for artists. We now in our phones have the means for creation, dissemination, and revenue generation. So it's mind-boggling. The only thing that's stopping you is you now.
All of these platforms are, it's a cliche and it's overused, but they're game changers. Yeah. It's they're absolutely game changers. Chris Bill on the trombone comes to mind, where he's making these really, really cool arrangements, and he put them up on YouTube, and his arrangement of Happy in particular
I know that guy.
Exploded because it's really cool. It's great. It's and it's unbelievable playing, and it's super creative, and it's just a webcam. It's just him, it looks like in his bedroom, playing with a webcam and a sequencer, and I say it's impressive. He knows how to use all the technology. He's playing his tail off. It's a great arrangement to begin with, so I'm not minimizing that, but the point is that it's a dude, a trombone, like a sequencer, and a computer, and that's it. And it exploded because I saw that, and then I said to Lance, hey, did you see this video? Or I said that to all of my Twitter followers, or I said that on my Facebook artist page, or because it was worth seeing. And then other people saw it, and then they clicked like on it because it was awesome, and then they shared it. And so when you create great content, it's easy to the trick is creating content that's that good and is that creative. But there's a lot of different ways to do that, and rethinking basic things like attending a symphony concert. That's really smart for our business, and the individuals and the organizations that do that moving forward are going to be the ones that A, thrive, and B, they're going to be the ones that survive, which is even more important than thriving. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on my podcast. So speaking of symphony audiences, I drove up to Philadelphia just a couple of days ago to see Carol Jansch, who we just mentioned, who's going to be a guest on the Brass Junkies. She's the principal tuba of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and is on my shortest list possible of greatest tuba players in the world, which I thought before this weekend, and then it's like that was cemented in what I heard come out of her bell on Saturday. Just stunning artistry. She played a solo, first ever subscription series solo with the Philadelphia Orchestra for a tuba in its 100-whatever-year history. And by the way, she played an encore that was a Piazzolla encore that was incredible. It was jaw-dropping. And then afterwards, I was told by my friend Tony Prisk in the trumpet section that she played a different encore each of the 3 nights. Like, that's just not done, you know? And I asked her, I said, "Are you kidding me?" She said, "Well, when else was I going to have this opportunity?" And it's like, well, there you go. That's the thinking of somebody that's going to succeed in our business. But the reason I brought this up was because before the concert, a couple of old people sat down next to me, which is weird, right? A symphony concert. And this old man turned to me and he said, "It's so great to see someone your age at the symphony." And I then said, "I'm 39," and he looked really crestfallen, and he said, "Oh." He looked really bummed out. Yeah, he was like really sad. I don't know. I think he thought I was 20. I think he needed glasses or something. So,
thank you.
Yeah, he thought I was saving the symphony, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not old, but I ain't young. So, I'm in age purgatory." So, well, cool. I think that just about wraps it up.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So thank you so much to everyone. As Lance mentioned before, the initial feedback has been just awesome. It's been humbling, and we're getting a great reaction from everybody. And I can't believe how many people have been listening already. And we will hopefully continue to provide fascinating and inspiring content for all of you. No one has used either of those 2 words. They've just said, "Hey, man, I like your podcast, but I hear I'm fascinated and inspired." So, whatever. 6 of one, half dozen of another. So
you're my muse.
Yeah, that's what I hear whenever they say that. So, cool. Well, Lance needs to go practice the bagpipes. So
I gotta go. Yeah,
yep.
It's a little after 11 p.m., so it's perfect time.
It's a really, really good time. So does Yamaha make a silent bag mute for the for bagpipes?
Actually, I think what they do to practice is you just practice on the chanter, and you don't use the drones, so you just work on the fingerings. That's what I know a little bit. So I'll divulge at the beginning of each month my body of knowledge, despite the size and shape of that body, so that you know what I know before we start.
That's
so I know
awesome.
that much, yeah.
So between pointing out that Victor is an artist for them and the silent brass mute plug, I realized that we're 2 Jupiter XO artists, and I've mentioned Yamaha twice and Jupiter 0 times in this podcast. So I would like to thank Jupiter XO and Jens, who's a Yamaha artist. Yeah. So welcome to the Yamaha Brass Junkies podcast. No, not so much. So Jupiter's awesome. So we thank them. So anything else other than that awkward plug?
No, there's no more awkwardness needed.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covered it. So, thank you every much.
Every much. Sorry, Tabor.
Did I just say every much?
Every much.
That's awesome. That's great. I almost got through the whole thing speaking mainly English. So, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode of the Brass Junkies.
Good night, or goodbye, or good day. Morning.
You've been listening to The Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Austin Boyer and Buddy Deschler of the Fredericksburg Brass Institute. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.